great to have this conversation. Jay is a long-time friend, and I really admire the work of Sehgal Foundation. He'll talk about it in a bit. But for me, I have to say a couple of things. Someone, an entity, an organization that really keeps the community at the heart of its mission, that really develops and designs its programs from the bottom up. Yes, you need investment, you need philanthropy, you need catalytic funding, all that was talked about. But end of the day, the community has to drive the solutions that they need, that they want, and that they think is appropriate. I think the Sehgal Foundation really personifies this, and that's why I'm a big fan of Sehgal Foundation. You don't see too many organizations and philanthropies thinking from the bottom up. And secondly, we all go with the mindset that, hey, we have something better for you. We go to the communities with this mindset that, hey, we have the solution, we know how you should change your life. Right? That's in my humble way, I must say that it's an arrogant way to approach social impact and social change. So I think Sehgal Foundation truly has flipped that model. They go to the communities and say, hey, what do you want? How can we be partners in this change, in this journey of change? And that's so amazing and so refreshing. The numbers, if you go to the Sehgal Foundation website, the numbers speak for itself. Close to 6 million lives impacted, and that's the direct impact I'm talking about. If you look at the secondary, tertiary impact, and at another level, it's many fold that. But they're already impacting close to 6 million lives in thousands of villages. They are present across India, and we are choosing India as a laboratory for our discussion because India represents 1/6 of humanity. So India is a laboratory for change. India is as diverse as it gets, as complicated as it gets, and as complex as it gets. So if you bring your social solutions and innovations in the Indian context and make it work, you can be almost assured that you can make it work anywhere. So Sehgal Foundation is working in the bulk of India. So what an honor and what a delight to have this conversation with Jay. And I'll just turn it over to him for him to give a slightly more detailed outlook on Sehgal Foundation's current areas of work. And then we will have a few question and answers. And you can imagine the nice fire in between us.
Thanks, Venky. I think it's indeed my pleasure being here and representing an idea that I think the panels that I've been listening since morning have discussed a lot of high-level climate issues, high-level climate investment. But I think we so now in our fireside chat, you will hear a little bit about the voices basically from the grassroots. I mean, what we are doing at the grassroots and how that is sustainable. So I think you have phrased it very well, Venky, that we work in almost over 3,000 villages in India. We are in 13 states. We are a hands-on organization. We have people on the ground. We have almost 400 people that are employed with the Sehgal Foundation in the ground, in the villages, in the front line. And as far as not just the front line, but we also have the specialists who work on. Now, just to give a little bit of background before we get started, because I know that a lot is going to be discussed on water, but also I'm going to talk a little bit about agriculture as well, along with the water. Because they both go hand in hand. So Sehgal Foundation started by Dr. Suri Sehgal. And Suri is my uncle, and he basically is a geneticist from Harvard. And back in the early 60s, he went to Iowa. Everybody know where Iowa is? Not very many people know, but anyway, Des Moines, Iowa, we're in a very large seed company, hybrid seed company called Pioneer Seeds was working. I'm not going to make a long story, but long story short is the fact that it was very successful. Once he came back, they told him to go to other countries and establish Pioneer in other countries. And in 28 years he was there, he established Pioneer, took Pioneer to being a local company to over 128 countries around the world. So there's a tremendous impact, tremendous legacy. After leaving Pioneer, he set up his own businesses, again very successful in doing what he does. And 10 years later, he sold all his businesses to Bayer Crop Sciences. Now it's called Bayer. And now the proceeds that came from that put into the foundation. He wanted to really go back Because he worked with farmers all his life, especially in the rural India, working with the very poor farmers in the in India. And he said, I want to give it back to do something for the farming community in India. And that's the basis of our foundation, how it got started. And so our key emphasis started with agriculture, that we want to make an impact. If we can do something for the rural farmer in India. Again, I don't know how much everybody knows about farming, because I'm going to bounce back and forth about that. Because, you know, when you talk about farming here in the US, you talk about farmers having 10,000 acres, 9,000 acres. No, that's not the reality in India. In India, farmer has 1 acre, 1.5 acres. Large farmer may have 2 to 5 acres. So you're talking very, very small scale agriculture. And we really wanted to make an impact with those poor farmers in India. And so we started working on agriculture, creating sustainable agriculture especially, not getting into organics or anything, but particularly working on sustainable agriculture practices, teaching farmers solutions below the soil solutions, so they have more productivity on the soil. Now, you can't talk about water you can't talk about agriculture without talking about water, as I said earlier. So water is extremely, extremely important factor for us. And so we've got most of our discussion will go on water management, so I'll cover most of these things as we proceed. But we work on water management, creating water-sustaining communities in rural India. We are not in urban. There's a lot of solutions for urban water management, but I'm going to talk particularly about rural solutions for water management. Our cost-cutting theme for whatever we do is climate change. I mean, how do climate impacts the agriculture? How climate impacts water? So that's our cross-cutting theme for all our programs is climate change, and I think we're going to talk about that as well. We also, another one of our cross-cutting theme is women empowerment, because when you work in the rural communities, you cannot just work with the men, but you have to get women involved, and especially particularly when we are talking about sustainability aspect of it. So we very closely work with the women. And just a side note on this is that we have, when we started working with women, we also realized that literacy rate is extremely low as compared to the men. And we did a research. We have a complete research area that does the research. And we found out that most of the girls in the villages are sent to a government schools, where the boys are sent to a private school. Government schools don't have the basic facilities, just as a water in the schools, or you have toilets for the girls, and for no playgrounds, broken, there are no benches. So we said, why not to transform these government schools, which we don't run, transform these schools into a very beautiful environment where you have every facility, especially digital literacy, because a lot of the climate tools that are available on the digital learning. So we took the government school and we started a sample of 3 schools and converted them into completely having all the facilities in the schools. Then we realized the girls were coming to schools, they were remaining in schools, and there was water, there's toilets, there's playgrounds, there's digital literacy, suddenly the food is served. So because we cannot talk about women empowerment in the adolescent and the adult age, it has to start from the very beginning. So I think we really see the change in that particular aspect. So I think with that, I will hand it back over to you.
Jay, that's an amazing overview. What I take away from what you just shared is the intersectionality of everything. Right here we are in New York, Climate Week. We see people from all over the world gathered here, and you know, we can't divvy up and say, hey, we are dealing with agriculture, we're dealing with water, we're dealing with women, we're dealing with public health, etc., etc. These are all interrelated, correlated, and how do we really take a comprehensive approach to addressing some of these problems? That's one. And two, you know, you're emphasizing India, but again, I want to emphasize that all the work and the solutions that Sehgal Foundation and similar entities are doing in India, it's very applicable to Global South and so many of the other solutions in the Global South. That's where the exchange of ideas and innovations have to happen. Jay, let me just start with one quick thing. I just have 3-4 points, and then we can have a nice conversation with this amazing group of people here also. Not too long ago, even just 3-4 weeks ago, I don't know how many of you saw it in the news, northwestern India and Pakistan, rampant floods, especially for one example, I vividly remember the state of Punjab. Farmers, and you're talking about farmers, 80% of the farmers lost all their crop. They were all ready for harvest. It was the wheat harvesting time and they lost all their crop. 70% of the villages were flooded. Of the 12,500 villages, nearly 8 to 9,000 villages were flooded. And it's a long recovery process. It takes, you imagine a whole year's work just lost like that. So that's one example of climate excess, the natural disasters, the skewed rainfall patterns, the droughts that suddenly occur. How, yeah, you're working with the communities on all these issues, Jay. How does a foundation like Sehgal Foundation, how does it modify its program design? How do you adapt to these crazy situations and how do you even cope with all these changes?
That's a tough question because, with the climate change, you're having these extremes, right? You have extreme droughts. A couple of years ago, we had extreme drought in India. Now we are talking about water. There's floods. Three of the big states flooded this year. So I think you're right. And how do you address issues as extreme as that? And I think you have to normalize the situation one way or the other. So when you, what has happened? Let me go back to the floods. Floods. What is happening is when such a harsh rain is coming, the water is not diverted in a proper way to channels. Like we had, I'll take Iowa because Iowa, I'm based in Iowa, so I think that this year we had tremendous amount of rains, tremendous amount. Now everybody talks about flash floods, right? You know how the flash floods happen? Does anybody know flash floods? When you have a drought, the soil gets so hard. Soil gets hard. And then when the whole bunch of rain comes suddenly, it is not able to absorb the rain, and you have these flash floods, what they call flash floods, and similarly what has happened in Punjab. So again, how do you normalize the situation? So basically how we do, when we work with the communities, and when we work with the farmers, we ask the farmers to deep plow their fields, because normally in India, the farmer, even in the US as a matter of fact, nobody wants to deep plow because the fact that when the big machinery goes into the farms, the big machinery gets stuck if they deep plow because the soil is so soft. So basically again, I'm going to a little bit of technology and all that stuff, and now you ask me the floods question, because the farming community, when they do the plowing on the fields, they do a top 6 inches of plow. But over the time, when people are using fertilizers and all this thing, there's a hard pan that gets built underneath. Okay, so when the rains come, water is not percolating; it is actually stagnating on top of the soil. So what we work with the farmers on the technology side is to deep plow the fields. You deep plow the fields so that you have more percolation going, more water going in the soil instead of rushing off in the soil and creating these flash floods. Similarly, we implement a lot of technologies at the village level, where doing the household level, teaching the communities how they can harvest the water at the household level. You have this extreme when you have too much water, then you have also times when they don't have enough water. So how do you create the water at this? So you have to approach the things in a very systematic way in every level. And you have to approach it at the household level, you have to approach it at the community level, you have to approach it at the farm level and the open land. We very strategically work with the communities to develop these check dams in various areas where the water stops and goes, so more and more water percolates. We implement what we call the injecting wells. Because the only way you can divert the water when you have the flash flood is to the ground, to the aquifer, and that's the best way to preserve the water. So you have these injecting wells. Basically, you create a well and you put all kind of soil and stone and everything, so your water purifies and then ends up in the aquifers. That's one of the things that we highly work with all over India, by the way. Venky, again, I'm talking a lot India, but these are probably cases true in many parts of the world, not just in India, that the water table is dropping like anything. I mean, we're talking in Punjab, where the floods happened. Not too long ago, now we're talking about maybe 20, 25 years ago, water table would be about 25, 30, 40 feet. If you look at the same situation today, the water table is almost 1,000 feet. So you can see what we have done to the water, because there's not to talk against the government or anything, because there's a policy of free water available, free electricity available. There's not proper timing for the water that comes in. So there's so much involved in the whole system that water is free. The farmer leaves the tube well, because everybody knows the flood irrigation. They all do flood irrigation, so they leave the tube well open all night whenever the power comes, and it's running, even regardless they need the water or not. So they have over-extracted the water, and then you have the aquifer so far down, so when these rains come, the water is not percolating and creating these floods. So you have to look at it in totality. How do you normalize the situation when you think about when you have the droughts and when you think about when you have the floods? So you have to kind of go through that whole process and divert the water accordingly.
Thank you, Jay. Just a couple of follow-up, and in fact you alluded to all of that already, so just quick things about, innovation, because again, we can't keep doing things the same way, because there are a lot of changes, macro changes happening in the climate. There are resource crunches, the ground situation is changing, there are migration patterns, there's so much happening at the systemic level, in nature, amongst people. What's your mantra for innovation? And especially in a context like India, I want to bring up the issue of frugal innovation. It's one thing to innovate with all the resources in the world, right? But in a context like India, in the global south, we talk about frugal innovation. Can you talk a little bit about the frugal innovation methods, the creative innovation methods, innovative methods that are used in your context to really make solutions stick?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, there are a lot of incubators in India for innovation, but I think you alluded to something very at the beginning, is the fact that you can't sit in a lab and develop something and say, go and tell the farmer or go tell the villager, here's your solution and you're going to follow. The solution has to come from grassroots. It cannot come from sitting in a fancy office. I can give you our own example. When we started the foundation, Sehgal Foundation 25 years ago, we sat in a very nice office and we came up with a plan for the 4x4x4 in 4 years, 4 villages, and 4 to 44,000. And there's tremendous plans we came up with of rural development. The day we walked into the villages, the plans, all those things were thrown out. Literally, because we found out there is no water, there's no electricity, the basic things are not there. What are they going to do with this business plan that I created? Because we all came from business background, and we said that business plan will work. It doesn't work. So the solution is what you have to come up with. The creativity you have to come up with has to be applicable at the grassroots level, have to be applicable in the villages. So when you talk about water, I just alluded to this issue of effectively harvesting as much water as possible. We have just came up with a solution on this came up with this one on the board also. Because a lot of the places we are finding out in India, where you have inland salinity. So not just a lot of people talk about coastal salinity, but then when you talk about very close to Delhi, for example, there's no ocean, no anything, but there's a lot of salinity because there were lakes got dried out, and there's a lot of salinity got built up, and the water table may be 20, 30, 40 feet, but it's highly saline water. So which impacts the people, impacts their bones, and they cannot use that water for anything. So we devised a solution where we create a large well and harvest the water and divert it to the well, so that, as we know, is the sweet water is lighter and the salt water is heavier. So we started creating layers of sweet water, because since water table is 25-30 feet, you can't go too far down. It doesn't make any difference. So you have to have a large open areas where you can create these wells, divert the water, and then it continues to create these water pockets in the well where the people can draw the water. Now you draw the solution which is close to the community, and not something that is not sustainable in a long way. Similarly, I think, water and ag. We have a lot of solutions that we provide to the farmers, how to apply more conserving the water, basically. Now here we are talking about conservation of water, and those solutions we provide to the farmers as well.
David is already signaling, but I'm going to encroach a little bit on you. But definitely want to get a few quick questions and short answers from Jay. Just let's challenge some of the things that Jay said, and let's get some conversation going here. Yes, Pragya.
So thank you for the panel, and
Speak up.
thank you for the panel. And as someone whose family was doing agriculture generationally in UP, a woman who kind of sees the reality when I go back to my village and I see everything that you're doing and the intersectionality of that, this is all very amazing. So just want to begin with acknowledging that. I think I'm very curious about the challenges and opportunities. As you say, everything is so interconnected when it comes to women empowerment, water, agriculture. When you kind of look deeper into one issue, you probably see 5 others that are like, oh, we need to deal with these to kind of get to that one solution. I'm curious if you have any plans with Sehgal Foundation to work with AI, farmer knowledge about predictability, kind of some things that they could maybe learn more about, and if there are any challenges as well, because we know there's a climate out for those as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the AI is becoming very, very prominent, especially in India. It's amazing how much every other door has an AI solution for the farmers. So we have adaptive technologies for agriculture. So we have a function which basically headed by an agronomist, and they continue to look at because you cannot just continue to push technology, different technology. First any technology that comes in our way, first we test it in our own, because Sehgal Foundation has a little bit of our own financial resources. We don't need to go to the partners or the donors to say, hey, you fund my pilot. Nobody will fund it. So we have a little bit of flexibility where we can call it our own incubator. But these are done on the farm, along with the hand in hand with the farmer. Those technologies that make an impact. Now we are looking at one technology right now, which you install a probe in the farm, and that probe will indicate when the watering is needed, when there's a different fertilizer needs to be applied, and all. So those kind of things, and then the farmer gets that information on their cell phone. Said, oh, my field is getting dry. I need to apply the water. So now you're becoming more and more effective on the water application perspective, and those. So yes, AI is really helping in this particular aspect. But I think again, one really has to be very careful, because keep in mind the fact that that small piece of land is the only earning for the farmer. And if we play with that in any way at all, it's going to be very drastic for those farmers. So we have to be very cautious and careful of that.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, please. Just your name and then.
Hi, my name is Mridhu. Thank you so much for the panel. I have 2 questions. You spoke about participatory approaches to get solutions from the ground. My first question was, what do those participatory approaches look like in practice? And my second question is around farmer trust, right? When you're trying to introduce a new technology, what kind of resistance, if any, exists from the farmer side, and how do you solve that?
So participatory approach is basically, as I said earlier mentioned, we have 400, a lot of those social scientists in the field. And we continue to hold meetings at the village level. Every village level, we go, every village we work in. We have a community meeting to understand what type of issues the community is facing, and what, especially the farming community, what kind of issues they're facing. Women, what kind of issues they're facing. Now, one of the things is you cannot address everything. We have to be focused because we can bring our other organization to our platform to address other issues, but our focus continues to remain on water, agriculture, women empowerment, schools, climate change. These things we will continue to be focused on that particular aspect. So having these community meetings and letting them know what kind of things we can do and what kind of solutions we have, because we have piloted so many programs, so we can talk to the farmers, okay, can we do this on your field? Can talk to the villagers, can we do this in your community? So you have to really have the acceptability, because you can't talk about sustainability unless you have that acceptability of the community. So it's a lot of work that is done up front before any project is delivered to the community. Now, second question was what?
It was around the resistance.
Oh yeah, resistance is always there, right? So you keep in mind, need will drive to solutions. I have a need, the farmer has a need, or the villagers have a need. If the woman has to walk 5 kilometers for the water, they have a need. So they will address it. Initially there may be resistance in the sense they don't trust you. They don't, who are you? When we walk in the villages, they don't know who we are. So we do, actually we take the key decision makers in the village to another community where we have done the work, and let them talk to each other. Let them have that, dialogue. Not just, so then once their trust is built, then I think the resistance is much lesser. I mean, just to address that, when we started introducing drip irrigation 25, 26 years ago, farmers were not interested. No, we got plenty of water, we don't need it. I go back to those villages today, and they're all doing drip irrigation. Initially there was a resistance, but I think when the need comes and the push comes to shove, then they really get to the solutions that we're talking about.
Yeah, well, we can go on and on, but I do, as the moderator, I have the last question for Jay. But quickly, I want to say that I have been lucky to have visited Sehgal Foundation's work in the communities. You have to see it to believe it. And behavior change is not easy, Madhu. As we all know, it's not easy. Kudos to the trust they have built over 2.5 decades now. So and they treat you to amazing food, great hospitality also. Quickly, last question, Jay. I know it's again complicated working with the government. Yes, on one hand, you're working directly with the community. You're bringing your own resources. You have philanthropic people like Dr. Sehgal who put in the resources. You have amazing partners and all that. But to really scale some of the solutions, to really get the buy-in from the government, and also tweak policy to keep it current and relevant to the changing times, the government partnership is important. I'm sure, I know that the Sehgal Foundation has great rapport with the government. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then we will conclude?
Yeah, we don't, we can't, Venky talked about scale. We are in 3,000 villages. India is a country of 240,000 villages. So how does 3,000 really make a difference? But the thing is that we demonstrate these through government. We work with the government to show them that these are the type of solutions. So we have well-tested solution, implemented, impactful. Impact is very, very important to us. And then we show it to the government, show it to the thing is that we work hand in hand with the government. The other thing you mentioned about the policy, we have a research center which completely writes all the white papers and all that, and how we can impact the policy. The replication or the taking to the scale can only be done if you work hand in hand with the government. Government does have good programs, by the way. There's Jal Shakti program, there's all kind of Jal Abhiyan program. There's tremendous programs coming. And our role is how we can, because government programs don't have the last mile solution. And organizations like us can play a big role in that process. So we work very closely with the government and not against the government in any way. And making sure that we help them, they help us. We don't work with their finance or money. because we want to facilitate in every way possible, but not working on the financial aspect.
Jay, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Jay himself is an accomplished change maker, social impact person, and you should check him out on LinkedIn. Amazing profile he has, and also check out the website of Sehgal Foundation. Thank you for your support to the Startup Bazaar, and great talking to you. Thank you very much.